Hello, friends. Welcome to the Making Spaces podcast, season 2. This is our very first guest. What?
Are we recording?
We
Okay,
are right
cool.
now.
Do I need to record on my end?
Nope.
Okay, try it again. Sorry.
No, I want to use that part. Okay, welcome.
I'm so sorry.
You're fine. Welcome to the Making Spaces podcast, season 2, to our very first interview with, well, first let's introduce ourselves. So I'm Sarah Heath, and this is
Josie Jimenez.
And together we are the girl band Making Spaces.
Listen, I'm here for an all-girls summer fun band. That sounds good to me.
Yes. So
I can't play anything.
Doesn't matter. You don't
but
need
you
to.
sing. Why do you act like you didn't lead a worship team?
I was like
Yo,
12.
call out. Oh, whoops. Well,
Yeah, still.
I was a very strict leader.
you really kept them together.
Imagine. I'm actually really nervous about this episode. So this is interviewing one of my favorite space makers of all time, Kevin Garcia. They are a spiritual life coach, help people really sort of navigate their story, kind of get into like what's holding them back. Seminary graduate, which of course, former missionary, kind of a fun story to tell. Someone who talks about body empowerment, someone who does YouTube, is now, I'm going to say, an Instagram celebrity. Yeah, in my mind, in my world.
You.
I know. But also just one of the nearest and dearest to my heart because of the incredible way that Kevin makes space for people. And also, if you guys need a tarot card reader, which we'll get into, really just sort of breaks boundaries, welcomes people into their own story. So with no further ado, ladies and gentlemen, and anything in between, the Kevin Garcia.
Meow, meow, meow. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me once again.
Oh, you are so welcome. So you and I, the first episode ever of the Making Spaces podcast, and may I add, the most listened to episode of the Making Spaces contest.
Listen,
Podcast.
Contest. Every day is a contest. We're competing with ourselves, and I get first place every time. What?
You are a winner. But you and I talked about one of your favorite spaces being your co-working space. So I want to revisit that story because I want to revisit now that we have gone through, I think, 3 years of sheltering in place because of COVID-19.
Yeah, just about 4 or 5 centuries.
Yeah,
you know.
I've aged. But where would you say now is your favorite space and why?
Well, I would say my favorite space right now is my friend Daniel's back porch. Because so I've got my people have been calling them pods or squads or whatever, but like these are like the quarantine. These are the only people I've spent any meaningful time with in the past 6 or 7 months. 6 or 7 months. So Daniel is one of my friends, knowing what, like, we all, like, I trust my squad. We social distance as much as possible. We wear masks in public. We don't, go into like large events with our face uncovered, those kinds of things. But oftentimes on a Tuesday, Thursday night, I didn't realize how much money I was spending on booze at the bar until I realized how cheap it was to drink at your friend's house. And so, like,
that's a t-shirt right there. Drink at your friend's house.
Oh my God. That's actually, listen, let's start a bar called Your Friend's House.
Stop it.
And we'll just sell beer out of a cooler in the backyard.
But then we'd still have to upcharge, so it'd be the same.
They won't know that though.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
People will pay a lot for the idea.
A dollar cheaper than everywhere else.
We're selling the fantasy, of like making it real comfortable. One time when I was in LA, I actually went to a bar that was inside of the refrigerator.
Oh, like a speakeasy?
Yeah, it was like a refrigerator at the end of this alleyway, and I'm like, is this it? It was like completely unmarked, but you go inside and it's like the cutest little thing.
That's the parts of LA that I just hate.
I just need you
White
to know.
man came in and said, let's have a bar inside of a fridge.
Just so you know, Josie is Angelino and is currently in captivity in Orange County because of her partner.
I weep for thee.
He's from, is he from Orange County? How did you end up here?
No, he's from Laverne, which is LA County, but real bouge. Real bouge.
Real bouge.
Yeah, she's slightly judgmental. So why I was nervous.
you're allowed to-
No. I am incredibly judgmental, and I will
Absolutely.
hold that in my heart forever.
Yeah, as you should.
Why I was nervous about this episode is I actually think that you two are going to be best friends, and I'm going to have to, at some point, both of you challenge me to take up more space as a human, like my personal space, and I'm always like, oh no. But you say the thing that I should probably say, but don't. So yes, back to your space on Daniel's patio.
Daniel's back porch is the space where me and my friends will share a J, we'll smoke some good. Okay, so my favorite thing is blending other smokable herbs with cannabis. Am I allowed to talk about cannabis on the show?
I mean, make space for what you do.
Okay. But I'll blend like rose hips, lavender, and a little bit of blue lotus flower. Let me tell you what, magic.
I feel like so good. Grandma. Exactly what I want to hear.
But that's what we'll do. We'll hang out. We'll share. Tonight, Daniel's making enchiladas, and then we're gonna watch Black Panther. R.I.P. Chadwick Boseman.
Will you?
Wakanda forever.
The heart.
I don't typically. I got really sad when I heard, but I cannot know what I will feel. I probably won't cry, just because that's not how my emotions work. I only cry if I'm feeling personally like attacked, and that's after I've yelled at somebody, and then I feel bad about yelling, and I cry about the fact that I had to yell at somebody.
Yeah, I mean, it is a superhero movie, so I don't know how emotional it'll be. I did see it in theaters.
I
hate
twice.
Superhero movies. It's the only one I've ever seen. But it's just like the Michael B. Jordan line towards the end where he's like, bury me at sea. And I was like, oh.
With my people. Yeah. Oh my God.
I have goosebumps. Guys, why am I so easy?
Because you're easily moved by powerful things because they're powerful.
You're in tune with your feelings.
Yeah.
I am.
That's
true.
actually a really, like, the fact that you're moved is the fact that you're connected and alive. It's lovely.
So when you are doing the work that you do, taking up the space that you take up, I'm so fascinated by folks like you who do public theology, we'll call it.
Yeah.
You're welcome. I love the idea of just kind of opening a space for people to investigate their own beliefs and thoughts and feelings, but you never own other people's thoughts and feelings. When you're creating the content that you create, do you have someone in mind, or are you just doing it like, okay, I'm just going to say my truth? Or are you wondering if you're kind of opening space for other people? How are you when you're creating these videos? Even your Instagram posts lately have been very intentional as space making or opening up. What are you doing when you're creating those?
I'm realizing I'm trying to do this thing my friend Arvi taught me called content prisming, which is a fancy way of saying I'm going to take wherever I make a piece of content, whether it's on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, like a Facebook post, which is basically a blog now anyways, because everyone's seriously, because like nobody wants to go to a separate thing to read 2,000 words. Your blog, micro-blogging, baby. Same thing with Instagram. When I'm creating something, I'm thinking about, my coach told me, he's like, Kevin, you know all the answers, but you don't know the questions yet. That's the problem. So I'm thinking about who is back at the beginning of the road that I started on.
Ooh.
Where was Kevin 5 years ago? What was the question they were asking at the time? So I think about, okay, my first big question I had to work through was, how do I square the Bible with my faith? So right now I'm working on a workshop called The Big Queer Bible Study. And so
the thing about you is how subtle you are. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I really want to give people a sense of mystery and ambiguity going into all of my work. I want to be very aloof.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's I'm thinking about what are the questions people, 5 years back from me are asking. And then I also have to remember that like my life has kind of had an accelerated period of growth over these 5 years. So I think I experienced 10 years of growth in 5.
Yeah, I would say that's true.
to kind of catch up for the fact that I was like hating myself for most of my life. So now I feel like on par as like a competent 30-year-old.
You know, that's really interesting that you say you hated yourself for most of your life, because I feel like so much of what you do questions people, like makes people question, like, what if I liked myself? What if I accepted parts of myself I never have?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you radiate a sense of confidence, but also vulnerability of like, but not every day, you know?
Yeah. It's the thing, like I talk to like twice a week. I have my groups. I have a group coaching program right now, and so I'll get on the line with 4 to 7 humans depending on who's able to make it to the calls, because we've got people in Europe who are in this group, and also people in South America who are in this group, and in the US. It's wild. But I ask, we do every single time we get together, I'm like, all right, tops and bottoms, rubies or diamonds and dirt clods, roses and thorns, what's your high, what's your low for the week, what's going on. And so this past week I was able, as someone leading a group on spiritual health and spiritual reformation, I was able to say, I had a fucking panic attack this weekend, guys, and I realized that I could get myself through it. And I realized how I could change my mind, and how like my recovery time went from being 2 weeks of just like running around in my brain to 24 hours of realizing, oh, I had a really, really strong reaction to something, and now I need to rest and love myself back to health so that I can get back to, the business of feeling good.
Yeah, it kind of breaks through that idea that you have to know everything in order to be a public human.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna
I'll
say
talk forever. You got to interrupt me, girl.
Okay.
That's not going
You
to be a
don't gotta
problem.
tell me twice. I was gonna say that it's like powerful to be like do this in a group setting where people are not always given permission to have panic attacks. They're not always given permission to go through their feelings. But as soon as one person says, hey, I had a panic attack and I learned how to get through it, and maybe this will work for you. But we're not always given permission, especially if we're like in a different type of quote unquote lifestyle, if you come from Christian circles. And I think
Lifestyles.
it's just a really powerful way of being together and making space for each other.
Yeah. It's been really cool because every single person in this group does come from some sort of evangelical background or some kind of conservative background. Most everyone's queer, not everybody is. I got one straight cis het dude. He's my favorite. Like,
oh, you just have such a heart for the cisgender male.
Listen, because I was in a fraternity, like I know, like, and I've got 3 brothers, and so like I do in some, like, there's a part of me that like is trying to figure out, how do I reach more straight men and tell them it's okay to cry? Like that, I feel would be I think it could be productive.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think like the permission and like having the space to, break down and say, I'm having a hard time talking to my family right now. I'm having like all of these, religious and theological and spiritual evolution moments. And, my family does not get it. It's a very painful thing to not have that kind of connection with people.
Because
and
we all just want to feel understood.
Yeah, and the people who are supposed to understand you are your family, quote unquote. And when they don't or they can't, what do we do? And that's the question I ask. Like, what happens when my expectations of life don't line up with reality? And how do I learn to say, okay? Or like, how do I learn to say it's well with my soul? Or how do I mourn it well? Like, if I can't have it, whatever it is, love of my family, a lover in general, the job that I want, if I can't have that thing, it is now my job to mourn and say, oh no, I can't have it. Or, oh no, that person's no longer with us. I can't have their physical presence. Mourn and grieve some more.
So coming out of a church background, I want to say that so often we don't make space for people's lament and mourning and pain. And
yes.
I find it really interesting right now that we've really got people who are having a tough time figuring out how to do church in this setting, because the narrative that they've always used and always shared is everything works out for those who love the Lord. I just wrote that, guys. You're welcome.
Listen, thank you for being such a good songstress. My God.
And I think when it's a difficult time, not just for like one person, but for like literally all of humanity. You talk about all these people that are calling in from your call. This is the first time in my life that I would say, coming from an international background, like when I talk to my family in England, when I talk to my family in Canada, we're all having, albeit a little different, but we're all having similar experiences during this time of sheltering in place. And we're having a collective time where if a church can't help you, or if a spiritual leader can't help you think through mourning or lamenting, if we think God only wants you to win, this is a really difficult time. Of course, I want to push to open the churches because that's victory. Like guys, it's a thing.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. My family in Mexico, actually, if you're listening to this, you don't speak English, so I guess it's fine.
Hey. Sorry, you guys don't speak English.
They are so into pushing for like that fear. What is it? The fear, faith over fear, or something like that.
Faith over the Lord did not give you a spirit of timidity.
Right. And they're saying like, I'm going to go, these churches have to open, and because, you know, the Lord will protect us and we don't have to fear COVID. We won't die. And it's blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, you have these examples in the United States where
pastors of mega churches who open are dying of COVID.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that. Actually, I'm not going to say something horrible. I'm so glad that I stopped myself. Ooh, that's called a filter. You develop that as you get older, apparently. That's what
Look at you maturing and aging. I mean, I think that go ahead.
No, I was just kidding, but that's just wild. Like the idea that like, because like, you know, like within space we think safety, and it's like churches, because like a church building is merely a container for people, right?
Yep.
And the organization of people, I like to say it's like more of like an organism of people, right? There's like these like relational, well, sometimes it's an organization, other times it's an organism. When it's an organization of people, then it's just like, it's very impersonal. But if it's an organism, it can learn to adapt. Right?
Yeah, it should. I've been so surprised how people have, I mean, it's absolutely difficult and hard. And how do we do it in this? And then how do we monetize? How do we figure out the idea of like, are we doing this well? Are we reaching people and caring for people in the way we should be? And we don't have the metrics in the way that we used to. And we're so afraid because we've bought into that narrative of like failing looks like not nailing it on all these weird metrics that don't really matter anyway. And I think it's so interesting to see people just sort of like hold tight to the space that they think they should be holding tight to. And I can't help but think back to even if you want to go all biblical with it, but this always, I know that's the thing I love. You are my friend who quotes scripture to me the most.
I'm a good Christian woman. What can I say?
I mean, it's true. I'll just be like, I'm thinking this, and you're like, bless.
And I got a whole degree in it. I got a whole degree in practical theology. It's like the thing I had to reference. I got like I would like quote like non-Christian folks in some of my papers. And I'm not saying my theology professor didn't like it, but I'm not saying that he loved it either.
Well, I was just thinking like, if we look biblically, the times when Jesus spoke against things is when people tried to build a pattern or a thing around something. Like, you know, I think about like the story of the Transfiguration. Sorry for the listeners who are not within the faith, but you know what?
It's okay. Just explain it a little bit. What was happening?
Going to. So yeah, so there's this idea of Jesus, the spiritual leader, is there's this profound moment where folks from the past are seen visible by including with Jesus's followers, and they've been kind of napping. So Jesus asked them to come with him for this moment. It's the moment night before he's supposed to be crucified. Shows up some of the leaders of the church in the past,
Moses and Abraham.
Yes, I can't wait for our musical. So they show up, and immediately one of the disciples says, I want to build a shrine to this. I want to this is the moment. I'm going to build the church around this. And Jesus is like, nah, Jesus is like, nah, we're good. Because the idea is like, at any time when we try to like, you're right, become an organization versus an organism, it's super problematic. Says the girl who's part of a very hierarchical system.
But I think people are searching for that hierarchy and wanting to go back to church, right? They say like, I'm not afraid of COVID, so I'm going to go to church. But what they're really afraid of is having to think for themselves.
Oh,
Like
my,
having
come on, Pastor.
think about their spirituality on their own without like this like peer pressure from those sitting around you in church.
Ooh.
I mean, this is like what I've noticed. People that I've grown up going to church with have really been not into the fact that I think deeply about faith and don't necessarily think that what the pastor is saying is absolute truth.
That's
and
really
when you're
hurtful.
stuck at home, no offense, but when you're like stuck at home and you don't have the pastor, like you have the choice, you're like, oh, do I have to listen to what this guy is saying? He's not right in front of me. There's no like accountability of presence. And I think people are really fearful of that.
Yeah, so because when they have space. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's because people have been taught that they're bad, and the way that they get rid of the bad is to be around the good people. And the good people go to church. And so this is how I know, like, this is my metric for how good I am. Am I attending church? Am I am I checking my boxes? And like the evangelical church in general, all of these churches who want to go back, they have this fear of angry and vengeful God, that if I don't go into the temple and feed God and feed Yahweh, because this is also like, it goes back to this ancient fear. In the ancient world, people believed that it was their job to work to feed the gods because the gods needed to eat. Right. And so it's the same sort of thing. Just like, if we don't show up and give a sacrifice of praise, how's God gonna know?
Yeah, if I'm not the Pentecostal with my arms up in the air, speaking tongues during worship, am I really communicating with the Lord? Not to call my parents out or anything. But
Probably not.
Probably not. Did you say Ferda?
I said, sorry, Dad.
Oh, I thought you said Ferda, which is like a thing from Letterkenny, a funny show on Hulu.
Sorry. Oh, yes. I love Letterkenny.
It's the two bro guys like, Ferda.
All I have to say is this. As the actual Canadian, I love that two of my favorite people watch a show about stereotypical Canadians because it's not wrong.
Well, because it's so different. It's so outside of my norm, you know?
I watch it and I'm like, oh, there was my childhood.
It honestly, it reminds me of home. Like,
does it?
A little bit, like Tennessee area, like where I lived. I'm like, there's people just like that. It's definitely hotter down here, and we don't go ice fishing, but we go fishing for like catfish, which is like the only, like, I love fried catfish, and catfish is like the bottom of the barrel kind of fish.
It has a mustache.
Delicious.
It is. Put some cornmeal on that, dip it in some ketchup, hot sauce. What more do you want?
Oh, now you guys are making me sad that I haven't been back to the South in, gosh, 7 months, 9 months.
Well, when I have a house and you want to come make some spaces with me.
I love that. Okay, so talking about your friend's back porch.
Oh my God, yeah.
No. It's okay. We've covered why you love it so much. Because the next thought I have is, as you think about the space that you want to create, not just as a creative, but also you just told us the good news, which is that you bought a house, which it was so fun because we've been talking about this for months and months and months. And it's always about what will happen in the house, why that space is important. What is it about having a space, a home that you're looking forward to? How will you make space for other people in that? Yeah.
Well, I think there was a transformative moment I had a couple weeks ago in a conversation with my present roommate, John. So we're not going to be living together in this house like I was hoping we would, just because, I think you can live with your friends sometimes. Me and John are not the best match to live together for, a few different reasons. But one of the things I was picking up on as I was talking to him, I said, like, one of my problems with I'm an adult with ADD. So like sometimes task completion is hard, especially when I'm stressed out.
Having had you bake in my house, I know this.
My God, like trying, that was the hardest thing.
You did such a good job.
Following a recipe to bake bread. Oh, that's difficult. Anyways, I started realizing that like part of me having this impulse and like this desire to buy a home is because I think for a long time the idea of home has not been safe for me, or I've never had like a place where like I could completely go and really relax and make a space of my own. It's always been a place that I'm renting, or it's always a place that like is only going to be temporary for a couple years. And there was a part of me that was really fearful about doing this, but then like as COVID has set in and like social distancing has been a thing, I have desired more and more and more to have a space where like I actually A, enjoy being, B, feels like mine. And like there's a sense of like being able to create a home for oneself as an adult. I think it's maybe a little rite of passage of some kind,
Mm-hmm.
because I think for me it marks like a change of season for me, of where like I feel like I've been running a long time and having to go to a different place. And don't get me wrong, as soon as the world opens up, I'm traveling my ass off. But I want to start creating this home as a space where more people can come to it, because I want it's big enough. Like it has the space to host retreats in it. Like the living space alone is deliciously large, and I can just see how I can set up the room already to have people sit around in a circle and talk about mystery and shit. I've got a bedroom with an ensuite bathroom with a really beautiful shower, like in a huge like rain shower head. I'm like, this is like the shit I like put on Etsy, you know? And so this is like, I'm excited to build this space because A, I want it to be home for me, and B, I want to teach other people how to build home within themselves. That's what the thing's gonna be.
I love that. Build a home within yourself. It's funny. This will be the first interview that airs, but we've done a couple of interviews just lining it all up. And one of the conversations really led us in this direction of like building that space within yourself first, and seeing yourself as a home. And, you know, the thing about scripture that we can say again and again is that there are some incredible truisms. Like my body is a temple. Does not necessarily mean like my body is a temple, but it does mean
it's a dwelling place.
It is a dwelling place,
and it's sacred.
And it's sacred, and it's I think we've for so long hated our bodies, our the physical, and horrible theologies out of that. And I love how you do so much work to sort of mend people's understandings of that, normalize saying, yeah, your body's super weird. Everybody's body is, but it's great. Like, that's kind of like
exactly. This is how we know. I know we talk so much is because I'm like, wow, that actually sounded like me.
We talk almost daily. But I think it's so good. As someone who formerly struggled with, I would say, body dysmorphic disorder, you know, I still do. We know I still do. Yeah. I mean, you're the only human I've ever sent like, this is me in a bathing suit and I feel good about it. Because I just have always, no matter the level of perfection from outside visions, it never felt like it was good enough or acceptable enough and lovable and all these sort of things. And I think if we think about our body as the place where our spirit dwells and not separate, so this very integrated understanding of making space within ourselves so that then we can make space for others, it helps kind of like the self-care world, there is a sense where self-care is amazing, but I don't want it to be like, I need to take a bubble bath 3 times a day, and I can't come into work today because I need self-care. Now, sometimes you do need a mental health day, but
absolutely.
I think if we're looking at ourselves as this sort of temple, as this space, we start to like see like, how can I caregive for this space in a way that it, like a home, like, because
I think something you said a minute ago really resonates, is like building a home within yourself, because something I kind of not always, but I will say, like, there's the idea of that your outer world sometimes will reflect your internal world. Like if you so the idea of building a home within oneself, I was like, oh, well, it makes sense that this home showed up in this way, because like I've already done the work to like be ready for it. And I think that's like a lot of it's the practice, because that's the thing I think about, like building a home And, you know, upkeep of a home is a practice.
Yeah.
Just like, you know, your spirit, your dharma, or the work that you're here to do, it's a practice. And like, I've been reading a lot of Thich Nhat Hanh recently. And so in The Art of Living, he talks about the 7 bodies. And one of these things he talks about is the spiritual practice body and the continuation body, where it's just like this, the spiritual practice body is this thing that you keep doing so that even when you encounter life's most like egregious and horrible things, and also when you encounter the suffering that you inflict upon yourself in your own mind, your spiritual practice body is there to support you through that. And the second thing he said is just like the continuation body is like, I see myself continued in all of my students, just like the rain or the cloud sees itself continuing in a river.
Oof.
Right. Like caring for your body is like not just cute and nice, and making the space is not just like, oh, I love my outer appearance, but it's also when you grow up in like different contexts, like if you grow up as an like LGBTQIA person who is in a toxic environment, if you are in an abusive household, if you are like trying to escape something, caring for your body becomes like a survival tactic.
Yep.
Like if I have home within myself, then I can therefore push forward to find home along the road. Right. And that's, I mean,
and then it opens up space for other people. Yeah.
Right. Like I did that growing up, like in a house that wasn't very safe for me as a person. And I internalized like, this is my home. I'm good. I am strong. I can keep going. And now, I mean, I have a home with my partner where I'm completely safe. And that was, like you said, like this manifestation of, you know, the inward towards the outward. And I think it's important for people to learn how to make your space safe for you and not hate it.
Yes, to be safe within your own hands. To be safe in your own hands, and to really know that like your body is not a meat prison, and your body is not like there's nothing wrong with your body. Like we all think that there's something wrong with our bodies, and it's just like there's nothing wrong with it. It functions in a particular way. Like sometimes, sorry, go ahead.
I was laughing because I was acting in I did acting for a little while. I think it's demanded of you if you live where I live. And I love acting, actually. It's one of my first loves. And I remember getting ready to do this, they were filming us for a thing, and I overheard the director say, all right, someone grab the meat puppets.
That's what I said about you?
That's what they were saying about all the actors. Grab the meat puppets.
Ew, I don't like that.
No, but think about how disembodied, like they basically spent forever setting up the scene, and then our job was to like show up and deliver the line. And I think so often we treat ourselves like meat puppets.
Yes. Show up and deliver the line.
Deliver the line, do the thing, leave.
Get your paycheck and move on.
Move on. And I mean, they were totally joking, but I think
there's like a deeper thing under that.
Yeah.
And it's like every sarcastic comment actually has a little bit of truth to it.
Yeah. So I was just thinking that when you said that.
I'm really curious, Josie, about about how you found home within yourself. Like, what was the practices that you kept in or developed over time that kept you grounded?
Oh my gosh. Well, growing up in a Latinx household, the comments on your body are ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
Like you develop nicknames like flaca or gorda or whatever. Like you have a whole
everybody's talking about what you look like and what you eat and what you're not eating too.
You don't need enough. Oh, you're eating too much. Oh, you don't need enough, but you're fat or whatever, you know, like it's a whole, I mean, my family and I are going through this at the moment, boundaries.
Right.
So like hearing all this stuff and like my mom doing the classic yo-yo dieting, I had these full-length mirrors that I demand in every one of my homes since then. And I would sit in front of them and I would just like stare at myself for hours until I loved myself, until I loved my body. It was intense. I would do that every day. And I still do that when I have, like, I'm going through like these low self-esteem points. I'm like,
I have goosebumps again.
And I'm like, you got great lips, you got great hair, you got great eyebrows, your boobs are fantastic.
Yes. Can I tell you, one of my spiritual practices is waking up every day and standing in front of the mirror naked and telling myself that I love myself and really looking at me. And that's what's interesting is like the more, like when I didn't do that, like I when I couldn't tell myself that I love myself, I noticed like how I was treating myself and how I was treating my body. Particularly like I've something that quarantine brought out in me, was very interestingly enough, was some interesting disordered eating behaviors that I'd never experienced before. And being able to say, okay, there's nothing shameful about that. You're just reacting a certain way. And so what would feel better? And I just keep asking myself, like, what would make me feel better? And it's not going to the McDonald's every single, for 2 meals just because you're so depressed and can't cook, which is like no shame. There's no shame associated with any sort
You
of
just
food.
called out Josie's breakfast love.
I fucking love
I
McDonald's.
fucking love McDonald's. Oh, give me a McDouble, a fries, and a Coke, and I'm pleased.
If I miss the 10:30 breakfast that they've reinstituted,
no.
Right.
No,
I
because
love that
Chick-fil-A
too.
does that too.
Yeah.
I've outed myself as a Chick-fil-A eater, but my friend,
how dare you?
Here's the thing: is that like as a homosexual,
What?
I feel like I know, shocker. I feel like it's one of those things where it's just like, if I want to participate in my own oppression and get some chicken, that's my business, and I'm allowed to do that because I'm making an informed decision, and I recognize that it's problematic. I know that I'm wrong, but hell.
I miss those fries all the time.
That's the thing. I have to just like think about like on the continuation of things that are a threat to LGBTQ people's lives. Chick-fil-A is not at the highest of my list. I would rather eat the chicken sandwich and then pass a law in the state of Georgia that outlaws conversion therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather. It's like when people get on my case about using Amazon, I'm like, yes, I know, but here's the true tea. I didn't have the money to produce my own book. Amazon helped me get a really cheap way of doing that. And on top of that, it paid my bills for the past year. And the other part of that is like, why don't we just tax Jeff Bezos? Why don't we pass laws that allow people to have a living wage?
Get him.
Like Amazon's not evil. Business is not technically evil. The way that we have allowed businesses to run is evil.
Right, like how many of us don't take advantage of every loophole and every coupon? Like this not taxing is like a coupon for Jeff Bezos. Like I can have all this money.
Guys, I have to tell you, I'm an Amazon user, and I feel
we're all outing ourselves today, and we're gonna own that. And also, we're gonna vote for people who are gonna tax the shit out of him, and not the shit out of him because I don't want his shit. I want his money.
Yeah, I want. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'll say this: I really appreciate this mirror idea, and I'm also loving that we're joking around about this, but there is something to be said, like how do you get out of that? How does looking at yourself open us up in a space that hasn't felt safe to create a space that is safe? Both of you are people that I look up to as far as being comfortable in your own skin. And I think that's hard work. It doesn't just happen overnight.
No, it's a long journey.
It can be a long journey. And I'm also like one of those people where it's like, it's only as long as I want it to be, because the space between heaven and hell is merely a thought. Now, granted, here's the thing, is that like the longer we've had, this is like my life coach and hypnotherapist brain coming out. The longer we've had an idea lodged in our subconscious. So say that idea is my body's not good. My body's dangerous. I have to make myself smaller, whatever it is. The longer we've had that idea lodged in our brain, and we've all had it lodged in our brain for most of our life because of patriarchy and white supremacy, the harder it is for us to change that. And on top of that, the more resistant our brain and our body will be to this unfamiliar pattern of thinking. Even if our pattern of thinking or behavior before was dangerous or detrimental to us, it's still familiar. And the traumatized body has been told, this is as good as it gets, you better hold on for dear life. And the truth is, it is not as good as it gets. In fact, it can be much better. So the work that we do, like the simple act of standing in front of the mirror and telling your body that you think it's fucking beautiful, that you tell yourself, because like your body is part of your capital S self. So even if like, this is how I think about it. Every single kind word that I've ever given to myself is the voice of God. Every single time I love myself, that is God's compassion pouring out on me. Every time I allowed myself to take a nap and rest, that is the peace of God coming upon me because I chose it. And I don't have to wait for somebody else to give that to me because I am one with, behold, I am the Father are one. That's what Jesus said. I and God, me and the source, me and love, we're one. And so creating the practice of loving myself radically begins with beginning.
Yeah, it's the first step.
And one day you wake up after like telling yourself you love yourself and you realize when you open your eyes that you like yourself and you don't have to trick yourself into it anymore. Like at first it feels like you're trying to trick yourself into loving yourself. What's the difference? Because the thing is, again, hypnotherapy facts. Your brain will believe whatever you tell it. Your brain doesn't care if it's a lie. It doesn't care if it's the truth. So like if I tell myself, I love working out. I love running. I love doing these squats. I love swinging this 80-pound kettlebell around.
Yeah, I literally do love those things.
And the thing is, I didn't love them at the beginning of summer, but now I do. I love running. And you know what I did? How I learned to love running? I started running and I kept telling myself every time I wanted to quit, it's like, no, I love this. And my brain was like, oh, I do? Whoa. So if I tell my brain, hey, every time you have a shitty thought about yourself, counteract it. Tell yourself that you love yourself. And that literally, that in the moment, switching it up, that is mindfulness 101.
Right.
Is keep track of my thoughts. And if I am allowing a shitty thought into my home, shitty things might happen. Why would I do that? I don't want that. And if it does come in and I say, oh my God, thank you so much for showing up. Do you have anything else you need to say? Okay, I got other things to do. I love you. I'll see you later. Just send them on their way. Release them.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Sorry, that was a little bit of a rant about brains and shit, but
no, it's true though, because when as someone who can get into ruminating thoughts about life and what I mean and who I mean to people and what have I done, and because truthfully I've been told I have a disordered brain, right? Like from eating disorder to OCD to ADHD, it's like you have a disordered brain. Well, I'm someone who achieves. That's what I do. So how can I have a disordered brain? So I've been taught that my brain is sick. And the first person who suggested to me that I might have ADHD looked at me and said, I think it's a superpower.
Yeah.
Sarah, you think about more things faster than anyone else. And you've been taught that that's a problem because, my brother is incredible, but he always used to say to me, like, you're air with hair. Because I would just say things.
That's not nice.
It's a big brother.
I know, but if I heard that from my big brother, I would sock him in the mouth.
Well, I mean, this was when we were like teenagers. Or
then I would have definitely socked him in the mouth.
100%.
But I think because he's, I am such an ordered person, and I had so much shame around my brain not being ordered. So like, you guys know me. I like things clean. I like things whatever. But I think
I don't know how you survive whenever I come to visit you. Like I try really hard. I try to keep all my stuff in like one place if I'm ever sleeping on your couch because I know that I'm like I don't want to stress her out.
Oh, you're so sweet. Because I didn't know that it was an actual issue. Like I didn't know that my inability to be in chaotic spaces is because my brain is already so chaotic that if and I think that the message that I've told myself that somehow I'm sick or disordered, it's been really helpful to have a friend like you that I'll say things like, my sick brain is stuck on this. And you're like, no, you just didn't get what you wanted. That's normal. But your messaging to yourself can often be the hardest thing. And it actually makes me not as kind to other people. You know what I mean? Because I notice in myself the thing that bothers me most about other people.
Oh, drag me.
The thing that I don't like about myself the most, or the thing I'm having trouble accepting.
Yeah.
Right. Like in a Latin household, your family is telling you that you have a terrible body because that's what they believe about their own body. I mean, the yo-yo dieting is the perfect example. My mom did this and she doesn't like her body, so she's ready to nitpick every part of mine.
That's it. And like it's like the thing that bothers me about most other people is like I hate it when people are actually happy, to be honest. You know what I'm saying? I'm just kidding.
You're
No,
a
but like, you know
coach.
that.
I feel like you
I
love
know.
people. Like, how many times have I talked to you and your biggest joy of the day is that somebody broke through a barrier they didn't think they could? So I'm
Yeah.
calling BS. You love when people are happy.
No, okay, let me say this. I don't trust the people who, it's like that person who's just like, oh, I'm just blessed in the Lord. I'm just so happy. It's just like a joy. Like it's like toxic positive people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm like, but the thing about it is like, how many times a day am I ignoring my feeling by trying to like turn it on its head and just be positive instead of allowing myself to acknowledge my emotion. And for me, like, it's hard for me to acknowledge emotions like anger. It's hard for me to acknowledge emotions like sadness, because again, I like feeling good. And I, you know, as a Enneagram 8 or whatever, and a Scorpio for that matter.
Oof, dangerous.
Girl, when I tell you, also my moon's in Gemini and I'm an Aquarius rising. So like,
I'm a triple Leo.
no, you're a triple
don't
Leo?
know anything you guys are saying.
Oh
Nothing.
gosh, I know that I like you. I love a Leo because like Leos are I know that this is over your head, Sarah. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
The thing I like about a Leo is like they have the ego and presentation that I want, where it's just like, I'm a badass and I know it and I don't need anybody else to inform me of this. Because I know.
I knew the moment, and I tell it all the time. The moment I knew I was hiring Josie was we were sitting across the table from each other at Panera, and
Panera birds.
I was like, hey, just so you know, we've got some staff members that have a really tough time affirming. They're very like task oriented. So just so you know, that's kind of one of the difficulties about our staff or whatever. And she goes, I'm an Enneagram 8 who has a high self-esteem. I don't need anyone to tell me that I'm okay or whatever. And she's like, I feel good about myself. And I literally looked at my friend Katie, who is at the head of our HR, and she's sitting beside Josie, so Josie can't see her. And she goes, because I am the opposite. Like I'm always like, oh, is that okay? Like, oh, yeah. But you know what that does? It makes me police other people.
Okay, say more. This is interesting.
Yeah. So I'm so afraid of making a mistake or, I'm so in some ways empath, intuitive. I just know how people are feeling. And so what I realize is I have spent so much of my life trying to make space for people, but also then trying to police that space. Does that make sense? So like,
yes,
like,
yes,
I need you to be this way. All this because I want everyone, but that is inauthentic to, and so there is an actual real space made.
Yeah.
And what it does is it's left me to be someone who feels like their own life has kind of disappeared because I've been so focused on, okay, don't say that, don't do that, policing, even if it's just in my mind. And so I am so attracted to people who are like, I don't need you to be or do anything. And I think that's what both of you are in some ways in my life. Like this is the space. It just is what it is.
Yeah. And I think, can I just say, Sarah, top-notch self-awareness. My God. I'm so serious because like you wouldn't have said that 3 years ago. You didn't know that 3 years ago. But now look at you. Yeah, you are building a home in yourself.
Gross.
And now it's starting to manifest. Do you see that?
I think so. I mean, I think there's like all these dreams in me that have had to die because the dreams weren't, for whatever reason, the thing that was going to happen in my own life. So I'm also turning 40 next week. And I'm not feeling great about it because as a woman who's single and it just hurts. It's difficult. Yeah. And I went through a difficult breakup thing. And I think there's this, like, who am I again? I thought I'd solved these things, but we never get to that point. And who I am in the divine, who I am in God is, I'm the person who preaches constantly, you're already loved by God. There's already space for you. But like, I feel like I've been saying that from outside of the room. Everybody get in the room, the space. There's so much space for you in this room. But I haven't taken up the space myself with my own person or body or dreams or hopes.
Not yet.
Not yet, but I'm starting to. And part of that is recognizing that I no longer need to police other people's opinions of me or what they do.
You know, RuPaul said, like, other people's opinions of me are none of my business.
Yeah.
That is exactly my life philosophy. I don't give a shit what you're saying about me.
Like, there are very few times when I care about it. It's like, I will say, like, having that opinion about YouTube, I think is kind of funny. It's like, I don't read YouTube comments because it's a garbage pit. But every now and again, like, when something's really dumb, I, like, will respond to it in a sarcastic way. But typically, like, you know, back in the day, like, I could not read my blog comments because people are vicious. But I leave vicious comments up so that people can see, you guys, this is a problem. And also, if I take what I'm learning from this conversation, whatever they hate about me, they hate about themselves. So there's a lot of gay people commenting on my videos, just saying.
I mean, it's actually true though. And I think the more and more we focus on the spaces that we create aesthetically, physically, emotionally within ourselves.
Yes.
And not in a toxic way of like, it's about what other people think, but it's about like, how do I feel in this?
Yes. And also like to say like how I feel in this space is just as important as how somebody else feels.
Yeah. And as a pastor, I want people to experience the divine. That is like everything I want. But I think I've so often allowed people to almost treat me as the divine, in that like I can really disappoint them in ways that no one else can be this disappointed, or I need to wholeheartedly let them walk all over me, because otherwise they're going to think God is not there for them. But I'm slowly learning, and it has taken heartbreak and hurt. And you want to talk about comments? Woo.
Let me tell you what, being a lady pastor, hell no.
I get so many comments. I am not Christian enough for some people and too Christian for others. And so I think there's there's a sense of like, how do I open myself up to like, what do I need and want? And this is like, I have this friend who is new in my life, and he constantly will say to me, what do you want? And it like stops me in my tracks, and I'm like, and it was interesting. At first I was like, I don't want you to ask me that. I don't like that. Don't ask me that. He was like, it's a normal question.
I know. We're taught it's not okay to want. Like desire, because desire is dangerous.
Whereas if we see it as like almost like a leaning in of the spirit, like, what do I want? Oh, interesting. Like, I want to make space. Literally, like, I love building things. And for so long, I made that separate from my ministry, made it separate from not seeing it as like part of my totality.
Part of your work.
Right. And it's been so interesting how many people now resonate with my work in a way that they never did before. They're like, oh, she's a good preacher. She's a great speaker. But I wasn't speaking about like, yeah, I'll spend 7 hours redoing a hutch because it's the same reason I want to spend forever not giving up on you. Like, it's that same, like, because I think there's something beautiful in you already, and I just want it to come to the surface, and it might be like a little bit stained and chipped, but like, what if we just like sat with it and already thought it was beautiful? Like, if you want to have the funniest experience, go with Josie and I to there's a humanity, what is it called?
Habitat for Humanity Restore.
Yeah, they've got great. So we got one in Atlanta too. Great stuff.
Well, the two of us will walk through, and we wish we had a warehouse to redo all the pieces, because we can see what it could be used for differently. Like, I'm like, oh. But I think it's the same mind when I look at other people, and I can see what they can be. But the difference for the first time in my life is I'm not trying to control them getting to that spot. But it's that's the work, right?
Can I tell you, like, because like here's the thing is like you're teaching other people how to redo their own fucking hutches.
Yeah.
You know, you're teaching people how to like find that art, that piece of good in them that's like a little chipped and a little gross and like a little like people say it's undesirable. How do we look at it and we say, oh my God, like how do I stand naked in front of a mirror and tell myself I'm beautiful?
Yeah.
This is why I keep all my conservative friends around, because I've converted many a Republican to the liberal side.
That's incredible, because I
recognize it. I was like, listen, you like people, don't you? You like Mexicans because you like me. So, I mean, you must whatever, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's everybody's on, like, this is also an Enneagram 8 thing. We know everybody's on our side. We just haven't convinced them yet.
Amen.
Gosh, what must that be like?
It's okay. So the thing about it is the greatest thing about us is also the worst thing, because there are times when I'm overly confident, when I think I am the shit, when I need to actually, I need to sand myself down a little bit.
Yeah,
Ooh,
the
thank you for
arrogance
using
is real.
my language of sanding things down. I think there's this beautiful thing too of like, you know, we have this do-it-yourself culture, and I always say I want it to be do it together, because I'm not asking you to DIT. I know, do it together culture. That's my,
Oh, I'm obsessed with that.
because the idea that like we don't need older people, we don't need younger people. I just need myself. I can watch it on YouTube and figure it out. The
No.
truth is no. Like, so as an example, I'm now the proud owner of a 1973 Airstream Overlander. I know. I bought all the overalls and work shoes. But I I've run my neighborhood for 2 years, and I've always passed this Airstream, and I've never talked to the guy, right? Why would I? But I've also noticed on that street that there's several older Airstreams that are like in different stages of process. And I'm like, this is interesting. And like, I used to run by and just be jealous. Like I would run by and be like, I wish I had a house that had a driveway, because I own a condo, but I live in another condo that I don't own, and it has zero spot for you to put a 27-foot Airstream. But I like have this whole thing. So I
forgot that you got a 27-footer. That's amazing.
She's huge. She's a big girl.
Yes.
So I have run by this house all the time. And the other day I was running by it, and I have a friend, Lou, and then I also have Josie, who are people who will like ask people questions. Whereas I'm like, I don't want to, it's the time of COVID.
That's your Canadian thing.
Canadian and British. I'm like, don't make a scene. Although my grandmother, who's British, used to always say, it's better to be looked at, love, for making a scene than not to be looked at all. So whatever.
My kind of woman.
She was amazing. But I ran past this guy, and I saw him closing his garage with his 1970 Overlander, so similar build. And I was like, hey, what year is that? He was like, I think it's either a 70 or a 73. And I was like, oh, I just got a 73. And he was like, oh, he's like, actually, all of the ones in this neighborhood are mine. I'm obsessed with redoing them.
Whoa.
And he goes,
all of them?
All of them. So all 4.
Can I buy one from him? I would like to own one.
Well, he told me before COVID, he was like, I had this big dream of turning them all into office spaces and then putting them on this big plot of land and co-working. But everyone, so one would be a certain kind of office, one would be another kind of office. So I've stripped all of them. But now we lost that land and the business deal fell through. He's like, so now we have all these Airstreams that we're turning into people's guest homes that they can like have on their property, kind of thing.
And that's an Airbnb moment waiting to happen.
Right, which is what I want to do with mine. So him and I had this conversation, and then I didn't even think about it. And the reason I say do it together versus do it yourself, because I've watched so many videos for years.
Girl,
5 years. 5 years on.
Well, really just 5 months, because COVID made me want to get a tiny house.
Right? Like on building it and all this sort of stuff. Like the joke is other people watch porn. I watch rebuilding videos. So
oh my God, that's so true, though.
This guy says to me,
it's not even Sarah, that's not a joke. That's just reality.
It's true. I know. And any guy that's handy, I'm like, well, hello. And not this guy. He's married and has children. That's not where this story is going. But anyways. He said to me, I would love to help you with anything. He's like, I've had so much experience with this. Like, I've redone so many of these. He's like, by the way, my name is Rich, and where do you live? And I was like, I'm Sarah. I live right over here. And he's like, yeah, just drop by, leave me your number and stuff, and we'll just tour these, and maybe like I can help you think through stuff before you get involved. And it was one of these moments where I was like, that saved me months of having to learn how to do research on my own.
Because you said hello.
Because I said hello. But I think it's that lesson too of we don't always know what needs to be done. And the reason for community or making space and even like knowing our own desires, like instead of me just always running by and going, I really want to be like them, but I can't even articulate that because that seems crazy when you live in the situation I live in.
Right.
Instead, owning it and saying, actually, this is a part of me and I want to do this thing has been transformational. And I think just to round it all up, I love that we don't have to hide parts of ourselves from God
Come on.
or each other, but we have to start not hiding things from ourselves. That's the first part we start with in making space, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I know that was a long stories about Airstreams, but all I'm saying is sometimes you just got to ask someone and do it together. Don't do it by yourself.
Amen.
And that, can I tell you? And that's the damn truth. And that's also why I started doing like this group spiritual program, is because as much as I love talking one-on-one about deconstruction, you get people together in a group hearing the same stories and being able to say me too. And also just like, I'm still kind of afraid of hell, even though I don't think it's actually real. Like, that's power. Just being able to, because you asked, Sarah Heath. Very good.
Well, I am so grateful for your time.
I'm grateful for y'all's time. Thank you for having me.
We would like to say this. We always end with what's one tangible. You've given us a bunch of things, but if you think of today, just today in this moment, what's a way that someone can make space either for themselves or someone else?
I'll give you two things. One way you can make space for yourself is to find one thing that you do that is literally just for shits and gigs. Like, you don't get anything out of it. You're not monetizing it. It's not a hobby that you're going to tell many people about. Can I tell one thing I like doing? I like coloring, and I like watercoloring. And so that's one thing I do for myself that's just silly and frivolous. And it's like, it takes my mind off of whatever's going on. So maybe go color. Do something small for yourself that is meaningful. And how you can make space for other people is to make sure that you're registered to vote and get your absentee ballot in, so that we can start organizing under a different administration for the revolution and the spiritual moral revival of the moral imagination. That's how you can make space for other people.
Wow, that was a lot. Well, thank you, friends, for listening. We've got a couple of business things we want to make sure that we say. First of all, you can find us where, Josie?
You can find us on our personal Instagrams, Josie Takes the World or Rev Sarah Heath. You can email us at makingspacespodcast@gmail.com, youtube.com/Sarah Rev Sarah Heath.
Yep, Heath. You got it, Rev Sarah Heath.
Yeah, that's where you can find us.
Yeah.
And when you find us on podcasts, on Apple, you can find us on Spotify. You can find us basically on anywhere that you catch your pods. Make sure, though, that you leave a comment and make sure that you rate us as well, because that helps other people find our space. The other thing is, we would love for you to leave a voicemail on our Anchor. So anchor.fm/making spaces. Leave us a voicemail and tell us where your favorite space is and why, because we want to know. And thank you to all the folks who have left us comments. We will make sure to add those in to the vocal part of this podcast. And so we will see you next week. Why, Josie?
Because we'll be saving the space for you.
We nailed it.
Yes, I love that.
Thank you, Kevin.